Okay. So we've introduced module 5 and it's developing resilience. And what I want to say about this is that already, even though you're long-term meditators, both of you, then you may have sort of started to notice that patterns and things are, becoming more aware of patterns in your life and habits, particularly in your relationships, because we started talking about that last week. So when we do an inquiry, maybe that comes up, but when we notice patterns in our habits and relationships with ourselves, it often shines a light, doesn't it, on our relationships and patterns with other people and kind of our hopes and aspirations and dreams around those sorts of things as well. And so, we're building a toolkit of mindfulness and compassion for ourselves. And we are looking to how we can build resilience for ourselves. And also, when we're resilient, we can often support other people to be resilient. And if you're taking this work forward and you're already doing this work, that's really important for you as teachers in your lives, isn't it? To really look at that and carry on exploring that and looking at ways to make sure that you're feeling safe and you're feeling connected. And we can do that through our practice and kind of this exploration for us. So the first thing we're going to do is shift our practice into affectionate breathing. So if we think about the breath, it's always with us. It's an amazing practice. And we're going to slightly work with it in recognition of the soothing sensations of the breath that are there and really noticing them. And so a really good analogy that I particularly like, and you might have a different one, is it's like an internal rocking chair, like the breath. It's kind of like it comes and it goes, and that really resonates with me because it's why I like the sea, because of the impermanence. The waves come and go, don't they? Like the breath, they've got their own rhythm. Each one is different. Some of them are high and throppy, aren't they? And some of them are like, and they've all got different qualities. And you can walk along a beach in the morning, and then even a few minutes later, you can walk along, can't you? And it's completely different. So it's just, and I think we connect with the breath, and it's why in dance we like the waltz, because it reminds us of being rocked as a baby, rocked by people or just rocked by our own movements, and that kind of rhythm. So it might be useful to think about the breath as that kind of soothing, healing, internal rocking chair that's always here for us. If that's a nice analogy for you, then use it. You might come up with your own. So we're going to do this for 10 minutes. So you can go away from the screen, absolutely. Go and sit in a different position, or you can stay where you are. And it's an opportunity to really notice when your mind wanders and start to bring in really compassionate language about that. So, we talk about being mindful, bring your mind back with no judgment, but see if you can add a layer of kindness to that so that you're sort of really starting to talk to yourself in this practice in a way that you would talk to someone that you dearly care around. So seeing, about that tone, what tone is there for you, and see if you can soften that and just perhaps be open to different language. And I'm going to help you with the guidance. So there will be some spaciousness. So don't worry, I'm still here. So finding a posture in which your body is comfortable and you feel really supported. So it might be that you need a bit of grounding. It might be that you need something else, something to make you feel all secure and warm. So close your eyes and soften your gaze. And just starting to become aware of mindful breathing. Sensing in to the breath. And any movement of the breath as it comes in and out the body. Are there any soothing sensations there? And we can be soothed by a sense of familiarity as well. Oh, here I am in my body with the breath. a sense of coming home, perhaps, landing, being there for yourself. Sensing into any sense of this practice releasing any tension in the body. Perhaps gently scanning through the body and just noticing any sense of holding or bracing tension. If you want, you might want to place your hand or both hands on the heart or another soothing place. Just as a reminder that we are not only bringing our awareness, but our affectionate awareness to the breath and ourselves. Just using those soothing gestures just to support yourself in this practice. And then either leave your hand wherever you find it soothing or just place it gently on your lap. And start to sense into the breath in the body once more. Feeling your body breathe in and out. And perhaps noticing how your body feels nourished on the in-breath. And perhaps something different on the out-breath, a sense of relaxation or letting go what's there for you. Simply allowing your body to breathe in its own amazing, authentic way. No need to change anything. Just noticing that rhythm of your breath. Flowing in and out. Perhaps inclining your attention towards your breathing as you would a dear friend or a beloved being in your life. Feeling into your whole body as it subtly moves with the breath and sense into that movement. It's like the movement of the sea with waves gently coming in and out to shore. And if your mind wanders, then just gently bring it back to the breath, just like you would remind someone to do something that you care deeply about, with gentleness and love. Maybe like a small puppy that doesn't know any better yet. How you might gently just bring them back time and time again. Noticing the rhythm of the breath, returning to it every time your mind wanders. And if you notice there's a sense of you watching the breath, then see if you can let that go and just be with the breath, feeling into it, sensing into your experience of each breath. Curiosity. Allowing your whole body to be rocked and caressed internally by your breathing. And if you like, giving yourself over to your breathing, feeling right into those soothing sensations as you feel the gentle rocking to and fro of your breathing. Just being the breath. Invite yourself to sit and be with each breath and noticing your experience. Really sensing in with affection, warmth, kindness. Your own natural rhythm, authentic to you. Like an internal rocking chair, soothing, healing, just being. And I invite you to just gently release that attention from the breathing. Just to sit quietly in your own experience. And allow yourself to feel whatever you are feeling and be just as you are right here in this moment. And knowing that this lovely, warm, soothing practice is available for you anytime. You can do it quickly, and you're going to be doing it for home practice. Just bringing that affectionate awareness to each breath and your own experience, befriending it. And following the next breath in with affection all the way into the body, noticing where it goes with curiosity. And as you exhale, just dropping your chin down towards your chest. Maybe bringing in one or two of those soothing gestures that perhaps you've been finding really helpful from earlier in the course. Just sensing into anything that you need. Maybe it's a movement. You need to stretch. You need a drink or a blanket. Just taking that wise action for yourself. And then, as always, you've got time for inquiry. And so it might be you'd like to share or reflect on something in that practice, and or something that you've used this week. So I'm going to open it up to you two and see if you've got anything you want to say.
Sorry, I've just noticed that my computer's low battery and it's plugged in. I don't know why. Hold on.
Yes.
There we are.
Right. Take some wise action, Lorna.
Yeah. Sorry. It wasn't
Otherwise you disappear and we miss you.
Thought I was going to disappear then. Sorry.
That's okay. Not a worry at all. I'm glad you noticed. Yeah. So what was that practice like for you? And how's your week been?
Yeah, it was that was lovely actually. When breath practice for me has always been the hardest one because
Okay.
yeah, I don't know why, because I know a lot of people relate to that. But I found when I first started meditating, the breath, I just found it was my mind would always be busier doing that practice, and there was more effort, even though I suppose we're trying to let go of effort. And I realized that I do speak to myself quite harshly as well, you know, kind of berate myself for not getting it right or not feeling the way I should. And I've kind of overcome that, I think, over time, but still it's the one that I kind of think, oh, how am I going to feel on this practice with breath awareness? Am I going to struggle? Or but even just that short practice then with the compassion, and I'm finding it sort of with home practice as well, I'll say about that in a minute. It's making a really big difference. Just that I'm not a very compassionate person to myself. I don't think I ever have been. So just bringing that in and believing it is really, really helpful. And just kind of, there was a moment in that practice, I hope you couldn't hear it, because I also remembered then I wasn't on mute, where my stomach was rumbling really loudly. And I'm just immediately just start internally berating myself for it. And then I remembered I wasn't on mute. And then I thought, should I stop and, put myself on mute? And then I was like, oh, just let it go. You're okay. There's only the three of us here. If they can hear your tummy rumbling, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? It's just I don't know. The bringing compassion into a practice for me is really, really helping. And in terms of this week at home, the mindful movement has really kind of shown that, because so the mindful movement is kind of like my mind. Sorry, I'm not articulating very well this morning.
Okay, yeah, you are.
Kind of when your mind is racing and busy, like my mind does get, I find that my movements go in time with that. I'm rushing. So first of all, with the daily activity, I said I was going to do washing my hands. And the one thing I noticed with that was that how quickly I wash my hands. You just do it really quickly and you're gone. And I thought, wow, that's like frantic. That's really weird. So then I consciously would slow down, and it would slow down the movement of my mind as well. So then when we went into mindful movement, I noticed exactly the same thing, that the movement, I'd start off and my body would want to move really quickly. And I'd be like, hang on a minute, that's just because my mind's busy. It was almost like a stopgap. Doing the movement and then going into a still meditation was like a really nice segue in a way. So I hope I'm making sense, just saying that the whole compassion and slowing down is really having an impact on me doing this course at the moment.
Yeah, it feels like it feels to me, and I could be completely wrong, but this is what I'm sort of hearing you saying, is that you've made that connection between your mind and body before, and now compassion's helping you make that connection the other way in a stronger sense of like, oh, that's why I'm like, right hand's washed, on to the next thing, that kind of, yeah. So and that breath, it's really good curiosity, like, oh, how am I going to be in this practice? It's really good to come into a practice with the intention of being really curious, and so that compassion can soften that. And it did in your practice, didn't it? It was just like that kind voice came in and said, no, it's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
Let's just go with it. Just stay with it. And yeah, and it's hard, isn't it? And the habit is like, oh, I just mute myself, or oh, I should have eaten this morning. Oh, what, you know, da, 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 da. And
Yeah.
you know, put your mind at rest. You as a mindfulness teacher will know you hear a lot of noises when people are meditating, and
Yeah.
it really doesn't matter at all from our perspective. But we get caught up in it for ourselves, like you're describing.
Yeah. Oh,
So it's cutting through, isn't it? The mindfulness cuts through the autopilot of like, oh, hang on, I'm berating myself, you know, that's an awareness. And then you brought in that compassion to say, hey, it doesn't matter, you know.
yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
it was a really good example of mindfulness and compassion, actually.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. That's kind of what I heard you say. I hope I'm gone off
Yeah. No, absolutely,
filter, but
absolutely. I'm still on, even though I am teaching now, but I'm still
yeah.
on such a journey. I've only been practicing for 4 years, and I feel that's like minimal compared to a lot of other teachers and people. So
I think that's great. I think it is a journey all the way
yeah,
through, you know, no matter
yeah,
how long
yeah,
you've been practicing for. And, you know, with the breath, I think that sometimes it's good and it makes me smile if because I found breath awareness one of the hardest ones to, because I thought I had to master something. It was a master
yeah,
thing. And I kind of slowly over time dawned on me, I don't need to master anything, I just need to be aware of it and be with it.
yeah,
But I sort of always thought of it as a very complicated thing.
yeah.
Um,
That's
yeah. And maybe was a bit highly anxious. It does become quite complicated, the breath, doesn't it? You know,
yeah,
and the body
yeah,
and everything. So, but yeah, it was John Kabat-Zinn says, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong. And I sort of sometimes just smile and think I can sort of hear him saying it on the podcast and think,
yeah.
oh yeah, it's like having a dad saying to you, hey, you know, and you go, "Oh, right then, you know,
Yeah,
I believe him, you know. So yeah. Oh, thank you. How
absolutely.
about you, Carol? Do you want to share in?
Um, I like the breathing. It's my best bit, I
Ah,
think.
we're all
Um,
different.
I tried the mindful movements,
Yeah.
but it's like the body scan. I have to be mindful on every single movement and really focus. Otherwise, my mind goes back to how it was when I first started the breath practice, like monkey mind. But when I do the breath practice, nothing. I'm fine.
Ah,
Except tonight, I'm thinking, I've eaten a lot of Thai food today. Oh my goodness. And then, and then it was kind of, okay, but that's okay. And bring it back.
it
So
really is.
it's really weird because I think I'm struggling with mindful movement, not so much. And then the body scan, still struggling. But they're both the same struggles I had when I started to do the breath, which I started with first. So now the breath I'm okay with. I just need to work on the other two.
Yeah. It's interesting, Carol, isn't it? Because you sort of labeled them, oh, I'm struggling with that, or
Yeah,
it's just different. If you can kind of reframe that as I have a different experience with the breath,
yeah,
and I have a
yeah,
different experience. And you know,
experience,
it's
yeah,
like just yeah, it's another John Kabat-Zinn. I've revisited his work lately, so he's very
yeah,
clear in my mind. And he sort of says, oh, you know, the learning, you just get on the mat and that's where the learning happens,
yeah,
you know, the mat being wherever you want to
yeah,
practice. So just that bringing in that element, that attitude of non-judgment, you know. So it's like I'm struggling sounds a bit harsh
yeah,
what I'm hearing you saying. It's just like it's different. I have a different experience or um with that practice. And
mm,
yeah, and I'm learning about, you know, X, Y, and Z. And you're noticing patterns, aren't you, within your
yeah,
practices?
yeah.
Are they playing out in your life, or can you recognize?
Yeah, especially the self-compassion, because I've had to try and give myself a lot. Because of closed my business. I just finalized the insolvency yesterday, and I
Tough
had to
time.
pay somebody a lot of money I didn't want to pay, and I did it. But it was really a really weird feeling when the money was sent. I had tears. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
My business is gone. But then I started to breathe, and I had this warmth of somebody just taken away all the anxiety of the last 3 years and gone, it's over, it's done. And I just felt this tranquil space.
Mm.
And then I wasn't upset anymore. It was really weird. And because I started to breathe, I was in this place. I was like, okay, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe. The money's gone, it's over. And then, I don't know, I felt my whole body as if somebody had lifted something out of it and went, it's over, it's done. And it was a real feeling. It wasn't just me in my mind. I could feel it in my body. And then I spoke to somebody after, and I just said, it's over. My business is gone. This is a new journey. But this time last year, I was in an absolute state. And it's only through, I think, doing the mindfulness that I've been able to, when I started really practicing, when things got really hard, I've only just started to be able to give myself compassion and say, it's just look at you, just learn from what happened. Because I found it really hard to give myself because my profession was always seeing to others, and then it ended, and I'm like, oh, I'm left, I'm raw. I have to look after myself, and that is my thing in my head now. One more year of looking after me, and then I'll decide. But the breathing yesterday really helped me, because it was just like somebody had come into my body and just taken out everything that was going wrong. And then into my mind, I went, okay, it's over. I've got a new beginning.
Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, Carol. So it sounds like it sounds like you've gone through a really, really difficult time. You've been able to lean into your practice and be aware. And sometimes that's the bit where mindfulness and compassion is so strong together, because mindfulness on its own, isn't it? It shines a light on awareness, and sometimes that's really difficult. God, this is really I'm really struggling. This is really awful. And then that compassion of like, what can I do for myself? Well, I can breathe. I can, that is the bit, what can I do for myself that's kind right now? And so if we can practice that in all of our experiences of our practice, so catch ourselves saying, oh, your tummy's rumbling, blah, 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 that you're berating yourself or whatever, and you can just bring in some kindness there. It just helps us develop a different type of resilience, and also recognize patterns where, what can I do differently now? Like you say, I've got a new story now, so what seeds am I going to water in my garden of growth, so I've left that behind. But a lot of people, Carol, would be caught up in that.
So
I know. It's amazing that how you've and compassion plays a real part in moving forward with things. And the mindfulness helps you stay on track, and gives you the clarity. But the compassion is often the thing that people talk about that really helps them in that moment, because it develops resilience. So it's that sense of security in yourself. There was a sense when you were speaking of, I've got this. I could go into panic and but I've got this, and the reality of the situation is this, and I can be here for myself, and that's a very empowering place to come from, isn't it?
It's nice as well. It's hard, but it's nice. It's nice.
So kindness and compassion is never about it's still challenging. It's never about oh, that's nice, and I'll just have a bath and then all my problems disappear. It's not that, is it? It's all of those things are useful, but it's really not about those things. Well, thank you for sharing, both of you. And it's amazing to hear how it helps, really, for each other as well. I feel heartened when I hear how it's helped you too, and it kind of helps me on my journey if I'm sort of going, oh, do I want to be doing this? What's this all about, really? I think, oh no, I know it helps people, and I'll think of you two and then deepen my practice, because it's not easy doing this work. So we're going to have a look at, we've done our affectionate breathing looks.
Oh,
I love that picture. And so, we come to mindfulness often at the beginning to, you know, de-stress and kind of for ourselves. And then we can quite quickly sort of recognize that, you know, we're not islands, are we? We're all, there's common humanity, and everybody's sort of struggling and suffering as well, and all got the sort of same needs and that link to our core values and all of those things. And what we really want to do in our lives is create resilient relationships with mindfulness and compassion, you know, and really nurture our relationship with ourselves, but also with other people. So these might be familiar to you. Are they familiar to you, all of them? I know you'll have perhaps covered them in other training, but shall we go through them? Is that useful?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay. So that openness, I just think of that baby when it's going to be a toddler, you know, or a little, any little being, just being open and curious, and like it links to me for to, you know, beginner's mind. So looking at something the first time. So catching yourself. So I'm going to use Carol's example of like um one could get caught up in, oh, I struggle with body scan. But if we always do a body scan with an openness of awareness that, yeah, I've struggled with this before, but awareness of this is a new practice, then we're really being open to what's here for us. So does that make sense? So we can get caught up in, oh, that's difficult for me, or oh, that's, or that person, or tell ourselves a story, and it's not our fault. Our brains are just wired that way, and we love a story, love a narrative. So being open to like what's here in this moment can be, you know, really, really useful. And it also helps us open up to other people's perspectives. So have you noticed that as you practice mindfulness, perhaps you're more like ready to listen or open to seeing things from other points of views? I know that's my experience, but I'm seeing you nod. And it really helps us be open to other people's perspectives when we're communicating in particular. So empathy is about, the first step is identifying your own feelings. So you know, whoa, what's going on for me? That's some really difficult situation. So mindfulness helps us really know, right, I know what's going on for me, right? Okay, I can look after myself, but what's going on for that other person? You know, a ability to sort of yeah, trust your intuition, and be respectful of what that other person is experiencing as well. And that really bodes for a really resilient, kind relationship with somebody, you know, and they feel it, don't they? You feel it if someone's really empathizing with you. It's like a felt sense, isn't it? You really know that someone gets it. They don't really need to say much. It's like, but if you were always looking after our own emotions in situations, then we're so much more able to be open and empathic to other people. So it's always it's always sort of steeped in mindfulness and compassion, all of these things. So we're looking at it through that, you know, that lens. And then compassion, it does combine empathy. So you're able to really see the suffering in that other person, and you have a wish to ease it. So you might imagine that that person's like a real dear being in your life, and you want to comfort them, you know, and that sense of how you communicate comes across. You might not literally want to do that, but you know, someone can be really difficult. I was talking to one of my son's teachers the other day, and I was just like locking horns with her, you know, and I was able to step back and really recognize that she was really struggling as well. She was struggling. It's a very difficult situation that we're all in. And I was able to really step back and kind of think, gosh, it must be really hard for her as well, you know. And I was able to voice that and say, I really get it, you know, but we've got to, you know, find a way forward. And it completely shifted the relationship. You know, I'd been far more comfortable just carrying on locking horns and blaming her. It would have been far easier for me than that, but I was able to really see her struggle and bring that compassion forward, because I was able to look after myself in that situation as well. So yeah, and loving kindness. I mean, you can do that compassion, even just sending, you know, have you heard of the sort of Tonglen practices where you're sending compassion out to the world, or sending loving kindness out to the world? You might not even voice it, but it's here, you know, it's here in your in your interactions with other people. And it can feel very, alive, even if you're not articulating it. It can be really helpful. So that loving kindness, that quality where you really truly wishing for other people to be healthy, to be happy, to be free from harm, and just, it fits with your core values, of like, that's how I want to live my life in that way. And then sympathetic joy, that really connected moment when someone shares something with you and you connect with it and you get those same happy hormones as you would if it was your news, that ability to really listen and connect and go, oh my goodness, look so happy, and you feel it, don't you? So as we develop our mindfulness and compassion practice, we have much more capacity for that, rather than going into, I always think of holidays. I'm always a bit envious of people's holidays. And then I'd sort of have it, oh, no, it's not very nice quality I've got. I'm always really jealous of people's holidays. And I kind of, as I've practiced mindfulness and compassion, I feel very differently. I still feel a bit like, oh, I'd like to go there. But I also feel like a warmth, and I really look at their faces and get a lot of joy myself from like, oh, how exciting, and be part of that with them, rather than looking at my lack, which was, a habit before I was practicing in this way. Is definitely an example. I don't know if you can think of any yourself where you sort of go, God, that's completely shifted for me. I used to feel really like that, and now I feel like this. So it just helps to sort of open up. And then that equanimity is that kind of real stability. That's that sort of steadiness of mind, gives you balance and composure and understanding about the interconnectivity of life. That's a hard word for me to say. Yeah, and you're coming from a real place of knowing yourself, knowing your core values, and kind of what's going on. It's a very centered, stable quality. One that you might not feel every single day of your life, but there might be pockets of it. And as you practice, maybe more of this comes in. But also, when we're doing this work, there's vulnerability. When we're doing this work on ourselves, there's vulnerability here. So Brené Brown talks a lot about vulnerability, the vulnerability of leaders, and the importance and the power of being vulnerable. And it's being vulnerable and honest that helps us know when we need to ask for help, for example. So it's often seen, isn't it, as I feel really vulnerable, but actually it's a really important quality to explore when we're talking about being resilient, because we are vulnerable. So what people do is they, through their conditioning and the way that they've lived their lives and all the sort of learned behaviors, some people feel it's incredibly hard and raw for them to be vulnerable, but out of that vulnerability often comes beautiful communication and more resilient relationships, and an ability to be able to reach out for help and feel more secure as a result of that, rather than being caught up in a place of, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like this, which is not compassionate to ourselves or kind. And then there's, respect and unconditional positive regard, sort of, but for ourselves, we've got this for ourselves as well, then we're far more likely to give it to others. And when we give that to others, we're far more likely to receive it, because it's like a very empowering place to come from, but it's also a very safe and secure place to be in a relationship with these things going on. Is there anything that you can share or add, or you want to ask about? And that comes from Goldstein and Stahl, and they're suggesting 6 qualities. So this comes from research of how mindfulness and interpersonal mindfulness can really dramatically improve relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, just going through all of them, it's going back to what we were saying before, it's like an ongoing journey with all of those, I think. Some more than others. the one that's really equanimity. I didn't even know what that meant before I started practicing mindfulness. That's probably the one that I still don't know if I'm describing it rightly, but I think my inner wisdom grown massively through mindfulness practice, whereas I've lived in a lot of fear my whole life. I would question everything that I felt, everything that I did would be something like a voice in the back of my head questioning, should I be doing this? And, you know, all those things. And through my practice, equanimity is giving me the confidence to, you know, to know when I'm doing something right, or not to question all the decisions I make, or, you know, it's been a really long, it's still a journey I'm on. But as you were talking about each of them, I was thinking, oh yeah. So it's just, every one of them is a journey, isn't it? And and learning about yourself. And I'm learning so much more about myself on this journey.
And being open to, you know, what is here, what quality is here that I can bring to a relationship, that, you know, that I want to create a resilient relationship, you know, with another person. So is there something that, you know, we can, you know, deliberately kind of work on, consciously work on, or just consciously be aware of, you know? And knowing where you're coming from. So I think that's lovely the way you described it. It's like I think of it as steadfastness.
Yeah,
I don't even know if that's a word, but that kind of like ability to know I know who I am, and I know where I'm coming from, and I'm gonna make choices around that with awareness and compassion for you know, and I've got far more trust in myself as a result of that. And that's what I'm hearing from you, Lorna. It's like you question everything. Can I, should I, But it links to those negative, you know, those cognitive distortions that we talked about. It links to emotional intelligence, doesn't it? Of like, there's just growing who you are.
Definitely. And like you were saying, it then comes out in my relationships with other people, with friends and family, has improved because of it as well, because you just take that with you, don't you? So we do, and it's an art, isn't it, of listening, and we know that other people can be, you know, despite the commonalities, we clash with people and they create stress in our lives, and we can turn to avoidance, and we feel judgment like everybody else, and resentment and jealousy and competition and disliking people. We know all that, and that's human nature. So it's not about not experiencing those things. It's just about experiencing them with awareness, and really being conscious of the qualities that we want to cultivate in our lives, and because we know how we've developed our understanding of how they help. And I think that's really useful, rather than, it's not about berating ourselves and going, oh, you know, my children are the first to say, if I say anything, you know, they go, oh, that's not very good. You know, I'm like really on it. I'm like, practicing mindfulness is not about never experiencing those feelings, or you know, so I'm really clear, and I really notice that, and so they've stopped saying it now, because we know that I'm totally clear around where I'm coming from, you know. And being mindful isn't about, you know, always being you know, doing perhaps what others perceive to be the nicest thing. It's you've got to be compassionate to yourself, but maybe compassionate and boundaried, for example, and that's really hard. But when we use these to explore, it kind of gives us a bit of a framework, doesn't it? Carol, do you want to share anything?
I think I've been lucky enough recently the last couple of years, to explore all of those. I've had experience in trying to explore all of those and putting them into practice. But what I did notice the other week, I had to sell my flat in all of this as well, my lovely flat. And my close friend was buying a flat, and she sent me the picture, and it was absolutely, which is my ideal home. And I just sold mine, and I didn't want to. And I found myself having so much happiness, genuine happiness for her, instead of a few years ago, all right, that's fine. She's got, and I just sold mine, and I just done this. And I was just so happy with her. Every day I was saying, did you get the offer? Did you get it? Did you get it? And it was, and then I stood back and thought, oh my God, something's changed in me for me to be
Mm.
really, really happy for her. But then she didn't get it, and I felt the sadness for her.
Mm.
And it was just an amazing. Whereas before, I think I would have, if I was running my business and I was all over the place, I would have been, it's all right for her. She's got the money to buy somewhere, and I didn't, and I was really sad for her because she was sad because it fell through. And I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
oh wow! And what the other thing I've noticed, a lot of these things, these areas that people don't have.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I've noticed
Absolutely.
that.
Because it's enlightening, isn't it? What
Yeah.
we're becoming
Yeah.
conscious.
Yeah.
And yes, and sometimes we have to be, we're here because we
Yeah.
recognize, not in a, a kind of smug way, in
No.
a way it's like they just that person just doesn't they
Yeah.
don't know, they haven't got the emotional intelligence, there's something going on for them,
Yeah.
sometimes you're just
Yeah.
recognizing how stressed that person is and how that's impacting on their ability. And I've got friends who have become really stressed in their lives at certain points and aren't able to offer me that, and that's hard for somebody because they're my go-to, but they're not in a position to perhaps give me what I need, and then it's my turn to still be, to have equanimity around that. And it's tricky, isn't it, navigating all these things, because your friends will, no doubtedly be absolutely supportive of you on your journey and happy for you as well. And that's a lovely thing, isn't it? To still be able to feel that that real joy of somebody else's news, because you're not caught up in your suffering as much. Yeah, you can see it with this equanimity that Lorna was describing. Yeah, it's really useful to revisit. And sometimes if I'm struggling with my practice, I'll go back to these and kind of go, what is it, something, is there a link to my life? Oh yes, perhaps there is. I'm having difficulties with this person or this situation, and I'll look at these qualities and really set the intention to work with it. I might say I'm going to work on my vulnerability in this situation, and then the answers for me come a bit, come from that. Not to everything, not the answer to everything, but meditation is a really good way of kind of, allowing fresh ideas to come in, isn't it? I mean, that's my experience. So, and sometimes when we're just sitting with a difficulty, but with real care and compassion to yourself, sometimes feels different. You're able to be a bit different with it afterwards. So, yeah. So learning to communicate well begins with developing mindful listening skills, which you are both, I can tell, are very good at. Probably very good at listening to other people and perhaps being the listener, So we're going to do an exercise where you're going to listen to each other. So it's sort of been proven that I think it's a really high percentage. I think it's something like 80%. But don't ask me where I got that from. It's 80%. Somebody asked me that after I did something on LinkedIn the other day, and I thought, oh, I don't know where I got it from. But it's something that's banded around, that we are only listening to sort of 20% of the other person, right? Because the other 80% is so caught up in, oh, I've got to give an interesting response. And it's all caught up in those sort of things that you were talking about, Lorna, about questioning yourself. I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and all that conditioning and things that we've had layered on during our lives. So when we listen, sometimes we're like, oh, I must connect with that, or we're trying to network, or we're just trying to be interesting or keep that other person interesting, when actually it can be such a great thing for developing and creating a resilient relationship if we're able to really listen, like actively listen to that other person, and let go of all our tendencies and just sit with them and kind of go, oh, I really want to interject, but I'm not going to, like just sort of really openly listen to that person. And when we set the intention to really listen, we don't have our agenda, you can tell, can't you, when you go into a meeting sometimes, somebody will say to you, I really want to listen to your perspective. And we've got this, and this, and we've got 10 minutes to get through it. And you think, well, you're not here to listen to me, are you? You know, so you have to sort of make a decision about that. But it's just lovely if people will just say to you, look, I've got this time and I just really want to hear what's going on for you. And then they just listen. So, you know, there's some Aladina, who wrote Mindfulness for Dummies back in 2010. I think it's a fantastic book if you've not read it. It's so practical. So she sort of says that in order to listen to somebody really deeply and mindfully, you've got to stop, put everything down, you know, and really set the intention. I'm just going to be here for this amount of time. You know, we can't do it indefinitely. It's too difficult for us. Our brains aren't wired like that. So, and to focus really entirely on them and put aside any of your own concerns or worries or fears or your own agenda, and really listen to what that person's saying and how they're saying it, and listening with your heart and your mind and your body, you know, so noticing what's going on in my body as that person's telling me that thing. And I loved it. And Carol sort of said, oh, when my friend was saying, I've got this, you know, this house of flat, you sort of did that. And so obviously you were even talking about it, you get that warmth. And when we did that taking in the good, and we heard each other's things, I was just beaming after that session because it was so lovely to hear, you know, and I was all warm here. So we get such benefits from listening ourselves, but equally, if someone's telling you something really difficult, you know, we need to be aware of what that's like in our body as well for us. So it's good information. And really setting how your tone and your posture. So like if you're sort of, oh yeah, you know, Carol, tell me all about your friend that's buying a flat, you know, but it's just, we know this, but when we intentionally do it, it's really powerful. So if we sort of catch ourselves going, oh God, I'm really thinking about, I need to post something later, and so I'm not really listening at all. It's kind of like that ability that mindfulness gives us to go, right, I know that, thank you. I'll put that aside. I'll trust myself to remember it. And I'm going to be here for this person now because it's really important to me. So it's sort of that ability to do that. So I'm going to put you in a breakout room and I want you to share something with each other, and I want you to talk. Well, sort of call yourselves A and B, decide who's going to talk first. So one's going to be the talker and one's going to be the listener. Hang on. Didn't want to do that. So one's going to be the listener, just for 3 minutes each. But I want you to choose something that's quite light, you know, like a pleasant thing that's happening in your life that's got a lightness to it. And just afterwards, just have a pause. I'll put it in the breakout room, so I'll do your timings for you. So just keep an eye on that. And I want you to pause and just sort of write down what it was like for you, just a few notes, what it was like for you to be the talker or the listener, and then switch over and do the same. So there will be a bit of waffle, a bit like, oh, I don't know what to talk about at first. So just don't worry about that. You'll got to know each other pretty well. So
is it 3 minutes each, did you say?
Yes, 3 minutes each. So decide who's going to go first. So do you want to do that now? Decide who's going to go first, and then it's easier when I put you in the breakout room.
I don't mind. Carol, what would you like to do?
Up to you. Do you want to go first? I'm okay. Either way. I'll go first.
Must have the wrong button. Oh, so what was that like for you? So what was it like? First of all, let's hear what it was like to be listened to.
Carol, do you want to go first, or? Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, it was nice to be listened to. But even though Lorna was listening, she was still communicating with her head and a smile. Because you can communicate, you can say something without saying something. Do you know what I mean? Without speaking. And I could see she was really listening because she was nodding at the right time. And the smile and the acknowledgement, the acknowledgement was there. Yeah.
What was that like for you, Carol, to be like, to feel that, you know, did you feel that in your body at all, or, you know,
it made me feel relaxed. yeah, it made me, because a lot of people don't, especially when I speak to some friends or anybody, they just don't listen and they keep intervening. And I'm on the phone going, I wish they'd just stop. I wish they'd stop intervening and listen. But it was nice to know that somebody was really listening to
Aw,
me. Yeah.
yeah. And what was it like to be the listener, Lorna, to Carol's?
Yeah, it was lovely to just to listen to Carol's story, and it was a real story as well. It had sort of fluctuations and the emotion, and it was a lovely story as well. But just to be able to listen, and I felt the emotion going through the story as well. It was felt
Yeah.
And what was it like for you to be heard, Lorna? For you to be
lovely. The same. It's really nice when somebody's giving you their full attention. And just felt just being listened to, and then no interruption, but knowing the person's listening through their body language and their eye contact. It just feels really supportive, doesn't it? And so many people try and have a conversation with somebody and they're on their phone, and you know that they're not listening, and that frustration is just when you're not being listened to properly. It's not helpful.
Yeah. And what was it like listening to Lorna, Carol?
It was good. I enjoyed listening to her, but all through it, I had in my head, okay, when she's finished talking, I'm going to ask her this question. When she's going to finish talking, I'm going to tell her, oh, I understand what you're saying about that. So it was like, so I had my list here, what I was going to say to her, but then we had to finish. So I couldn't, because I could relate to what she was saying. I know plenty of people who've been through the experience. But it was nice to,
I felt the same when you were talking. There were points where I wanted to go, and that's in, but
but you have to remember, I had to remember it's her time, not mine.
Yeah, and it stops that real active listening, doesn't it? If you get sort of caught up in I must, you're almost like, and people sense it, don't they? They sense, I must, makes you feel self-conscious rather than relaxed. Because if you think, I've spoken for too long, or it looks like they want to say something, it sort of builds attention, doesn't it? Whereas if you sort of keep looking at them, they look quite happy, they're smiling and they're nodding, and they're enjoying listening, because it is a treat to listen to somebody's story. So those qualities are just really important. And sometimes if you're struggling with somebody, or somebody's struggling with you, you can use that those listening. I really need you to really listen to me. Have you got capacity to do that? Because of course we might pick moments when then, and that's all that's happening often, isn't it? We want to have a chat with a good friend and they just don't have the capacity at the moment, or literally practically, or whatever. So I learned through my mindfulness and compassion to really book that in, to say I really want to spend some quality time with you and catch up, and I need to talk to you about X, Y, and Z, and so that they could create a proper space for me, rather than I'll meet you for a coffee, because you say I just want to catch up. You're not really communicating what you're needing, what your desire is for that. So I sort of learned, although it was very uncomfortable, because I thought they might turn around and say, what do we want to do that for? Which is fear-based, is exactly what Lorna said. We're recognizing that, underneath, like when we did the language of emotions, what's underneath there is there's a fear here that I'm not good enough to be heard, or something, and knowing that really helps one communicate effectively. So we're going to move on to an exercise. We're doing that. Carol, I can't really see you. I just want to check that you've got enough light to do, and your screen's very dark, so
is it?
I can see you, but it's like you're in a shadow. I don't know if you want
like that earlier, was it?
No.
Is it all right if I just quickly nip to the toilet?
Of course.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go for it, Lorna. That's fine. I'll just pause the recording for a minute till she's back. Do you need anything?
No, I'm fine. I've got my
You're
water.
okay.
My soda water. I'm fine.
Busier than ever, aren't they? And not looking necessarily for that deep connection, because they're like, with technology.
Yeah.
So it's so tricky if you're a person that really thrives on deep connections and
Yeah.
and it's hard to find sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's but um the more you really do that soul searching about what you want and need in your life, which is what we're going to do next, there might be some things that some answers that come up for you where you can look in a different direction for that, or articulate your needs more, in a way that's really kind and compassionate to you. Do you know what I mean? Rather than like, oh, they haven't answered me back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 'Cause it's a horrible feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Waiting for people. So I'm going to talk to you about, we've talked about emotional intelligence in the last session, and that sort of building in that trust in yourself and that building of trust in relationships. Because in our mindfulness practice, we're always observing, listening, kind of building those communication qualities within ourselves and our practice, and that ripples out into our relationships with others. And when we become more emotionally intelligent, just like Carol, you just gave a brilliant response of like, wanting a friend to kind of be there for you, you didn't have time, and you, a really emotional intelligence response, you sort of saw the wider picture, what was going on for you, what was going on for her, and like, yeah, let's have a call when you've got time. That shows that, you trust your own responses more fully, whereas before you might have, it might have been different. So some really good examples coming through of that. So when we can learn to understand the emotional reactions of others without judgment, and seeing them as being just people that want something good for themselves. We all want what's good for us, don't we? We all want to ease our own suffering, and we all want to be happy, and that's often where people are coming from. It's not so personal to us. So yeah, there's an exercise called the 10,000 things. Have you done that at all? We're not going to do it in this course, but it's a useful one. So the concept being that there could be up to 10,000 reasons why that person's behaving that way. We might never know them all, but we can sort of guess, knowing what we know about what's going on in their lives, their conditioning, their culture, their own beliefs, their childhood, everything like that. So, to really be able to look with that wider perspective. And we have to fill in the gaps sometimes for people, but just looking differently and with that sort of mindfulness and compassion lens, it can really help us to place value on our own emotions, know the fabric of them really well, so that we can lean into our practices in times of adversity. So one way of doing that is looking at our emotions. If you imagine, I mean, this is quite it's a helpful visual in some ways. If you imagine that the room that this backdraft, this fire is in, is your heart. Okay, so that heart, and in this is your heart, like a container, and the fire is your emotions. So when we get triggered, sometimes it can feel like that, can't it? It can feel really quite visceral, like, oh, my throat goes dry, my heart races, and I'm activated, I'm kind of triggered. And sometimes when we've got a lot of stress going on in our lives, it doesn't take much for us to get triggered. It's like a a constant thing. But sometimes it's something people say or a look they give you, anything. And so if we can explore that, thinking that our heart is the container with the fire in it, and our fire is our emotions. If our heart, our room that's our heart, is tight and closed, and it doesn't give any oxygen to emotions, they sort of disappear. And our belief might be that they've gone, but often they're not gone. What we know is that they're not gone. They're buried, or they're repressed, or they're there, and we're feeling them. We're not allowing ourselves to feel them. So no oxygen is not great for this. But equally, and this brings me back to in the days when I worked in residential care, and we used to do fire training with the children, and we'd be like, stay low, and we'd have all songs and things like that. And you could probably relate to this, Carol, with the sort of learning through songs and things like that. And we'd be crawling along, and then we'd feel the door. Is the door hot? Oh yeah, it's warm. Is it hot? Is it safe to open? Okay, well, it's warm, but I'll just open it a bit, because what you don't want is this backdraft of like opening the door, oxygenating all those, you know, emotions that are there, and boom, and then it's overwhelming. You don't know, it's uncontainable. So we want to open the door. If we open our door to our emotions just as much as we can, working at our own pace at our own time, and we might choose to touch the door and go, not going there today, like it's just not, you know, I need some support to deal with this, or I'm just going to be aware of it and I'm going to look at it later. You know, we're in charge, we're in control of our own practice and how we work with them. Then, you know, we might be able to just have a little look, and we might still get a little whoosh of like when the oxygen hits it, but we can use our practice and all our tools to support ourselves, like the breath, you know, like Carol, you were saying, oh, I just connected with the breath, and that really helped me when you were triggered, that awful thing that you had to deal with this, you know, this week. And but if you'd have opened it wide and let everything, it's not fair, you would have tipped into overwhelm. So it's a way of looking after yourself. So it sometimes is a useful analogy. You know, the room the fire's in being your heart, and the fire being the emotions. And I find that doorway a really useful analogy of like, oh, I'm just gonna, no, that's too hot. I'm not opening that one today, you know, but it's there, and I'm going to acknowledge it and validate it. And I'm going to, you know, practice with it and lean into my practice and support myself in the best way I can. So I hope that's helpful. I don't know. Let's do the other bits first, and then see if there's anything that comes up for you that might be useful to discuss. Why are you not there? There you go. So it's really important when we're doing this work, any of this work, mindfulness and compassion. Mindfulness really sheds a light, may not be aware of, you know, what's bubbling up underneath. It's there already, you know, that's what's to understand. Sometimes compassion can really bring it to the surface and help us work with it, but we must work with in our own pace. You know, it's like, how can I throw myself a life buoy in this situation, you know? And it might be like, I'm just going to sit with the breath, or take a moment, or go out in nature, or take in the good, or whatever, call a friend, self-soothe, you know, those sort of really useful strategies that we're learning. And it helps us flex our mindfulness and compassion muscles. So it's about, you know, building those muscles. They're not going to be like massive, you know, if you try and build your bicep up or get a definition in any muscle in your body, it takes time. We have to flex them, don't we? And then look after them, you know, make sure that we're not, you know, we've got plenty of water and we're hydrated and all those things. It's the same concept, so that we can become more resilient and resourced over amount of time. You know, it's not a quick fix. And sometimes that can feel tricky, because you think, oh, another layer of the onion. I thought I dealt with that. You know, I get so frustrated. I think, oh, another thing. Oh, I thought I dealt with that. Oh, it's here again. And of course, we're going to be triggered and activated by stressful situations that we're not in control of all our life. So these are great skills for us to learn and to pass on to others. So if we think of it in this model, and so with the safety, this concept of a circle of safety when we're practicing, and this will help us go on into our lives. So this middle bit in our practice, you know, it's like we need to know how we feel safe. We need to have a foundational knowledge of what it feels for us to be safe. So I would say, from what's been shared, Carol felt really safe in her breath awareness practice. You know, she's like, oh, you know, there's a real sense of dropping down and dropping into it. And then I say with your exploration, Lorna, what you were sharing earlier is that challenge around sort of mindful movement. You know, you're in that place of safety, and then you're able to sort of go curious, oh, why am I moving quickly, or why am I washing my hands like that sense of curiosity. So sort of coming into that feels a bit tricky. Oh, what's here, you know, but And you might play with the edge of that. And this is a great place to be, because this is where you are flexing your, mindfulness and resilient muscles. But what we don't want you to do is maybe you play with the edge of that going into there, but we don't want you to go into overwhelm, that backdraft where it's like it's all suddenly got too big, So we need to know what all these things feel like for us so that we can come back to a sense of safety within our practice and also within our lives. If you're around someone and you're like, I'm feeling a bit triggered by this person, their behavior, but I've got, I don't feel like I can leave. So how can I make myself feel safe? Well, maybe I could bring in some self-soothing, or I can just sit with the breath, or I can just put my hand here because that's really hard to hear, or any of those things. Or, maybe I need to know I've got a choice to leave, or I do a stop. So let's have a look at what this means to us. If you could draw out just roughly on a bit of paper your 3 circles, and then just spend some time just writing down. So what is it for you? What does it feel like to be in that circle of safety? And what tools have you got to come back to it whenever you need to? And that could be just planting your feet firmly on the floor. I find that really useful. I'm being really triggered by what this person's saying, I'm going to plant my feet right on the floor and breathe, but what does it actually feel like physically and emotionally for you to be here? And are you clear around that? What does it feel to be in challenge? To be sort of gently curious? And what does it feel like for, when oh gosh, I'm feeling quite overwhelmed? And a lot of people don't have that, don't have that awareness. Just on the outside of the circles or wherever, it doesn't matter if you put them somewhere else, it's not a test. Just see if you can capture some of your go-tos, some of your tools that you absolutely know bring you back to that circle of safety. And that can be in your practice, and outside. And you can keep adding to this, it might be useful for you to just use this tool as you practice. If a challenge comes up for you in the practice, or you feel a bit overwhelmed in the practice, like have a little reminder or make a little note of, how did what was that like for me, and how did I get back? And just to reiterate, in our practice, if we're ever triggered, then there's an invitation to always, really useful things that you can do is just, open your eyes wider, look around, start to take in things of familiarity, and perhaps even a taking in the good. Come out of the practice and just go to your circle of safety practice. So it might be the breath, or it might be movement, using self-soothing, and then invite yourself with no pressure to come back into the practice. I've had to do that on retreat several times where I'm like, oh, I'm going so deep in this practice here, I just feel a bit unsafe. So I just open my eyes, have a little stretch, have a sip of water, change position, and then when I'm ready, because otherwise I'll just be like, oh no, I can't do it, and I've got 5 days of retreat. I just tell myself all sorts of things, and so I just look after myself in that moment, and then when I'm ready, I go back. And if I'm not ready, I make a decision. Actually, I need to go and walk in nature now. And that's what I do, So giving yourself permission not to stay in a practice if it's not right for you. And that's really useful. And when we do that within our practice and we're kind to ourselves about it, then we do it in life as well. We go, actually, I'm just going to have a coffee with that person, and then I'm going to go. I'm not going to stay with them like I usually would for 3 hours, because I'm not feeling that great about it. And that's okay. You can still be kind about it, but it's different ways of looking after yourself, isn't it? How was that for you to do? Was it useful? Did you come up with anything that you weren't aware of, or was it all pretty succinct for you and something that you practice?
It
I
is.
think,
Oh, sorry.
go on. No, you go.
Oh,
Go.
sorry. It is something that I practice, but I don't sit down and kind of analyze it like this. I almost feel like I have to go away and process this a bit more.
Yeah, do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sort of going over my overall mindful journey, I think I've always been not pushing myself, allowing myself to get into the challenge kind of state more, becoming from a place of fear. Like when I was really anxious, I sometimes I couldn't even leave the house.
Yeah.
Like really fear. So I'm way over that now, but it's taken a journey of mindfulness to do that. And it's kind of, my place of safety then was home, and then having to come out and challenge myself in all sorts of situations that would trigger me, but using mindfulness to stop me going to overwhelm. So that's been my kind of mindful journey over the last 4 years. But again, sort of specifically, there's so many practices that I use, like stop and the grounding with my feet, and coming back to the breath. Walking in nature is a really big one for me now. The reason we got my first dog was because of my panic attacks, actually, and he kind of saved me as well.
That's soothing. The soothing.
Absolutely. Because my husband works away a lot and the kids were tiny, and I'd have all these panic attacks at night when I'm sat on my own in the dark, and so we got a puppy, and it was the best thing. It's lovely. Anyway, and he's 13 now. So walking in nature is a really big one for me. I get out as much as I can, but just seeing it like this, which I haven't looked at it quite like this before. We've looked at like stress monitor diagrams and things before, but this is kind of, I think, well, this is actually what I do. This is how I manage my life.
And how does that feel to make you go, oh, I'm doing that?
It's because I've never looked at it like that, and I think, well, obviously moving in the right direction. Well, I know I am, because I can feel it, but
and it's cyclical. To think of it as cyclical, so like sometimes I'm like, I'm always in the middle bit, because I know I need to be play it a bit safe, and then I kind of like, I want to grow a bit, but the next exercise sort of helps you. It's like, oh, it's okay that I'm in challenge because I'm growing something. It's that understanding of yourself, the emotional intelligence part, where you're like, yeah, I'm not surprised I'm feeling a bit like that, because I'm actively, consciously growing an area of my life that I want to cultivate. And that can be challenging, but I know how to get back. That's the bit that you said that with such confidence, So lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Carol, anything to add?
I think I don't know if I understood your question, but there's two situations. One, if I'm meditating and, like you said, you think it's not right for you at the time when you're sitting there, I will try and sit, and I'll try and keep on breathing. But if not, I'll just get up and do walking meditation, and that normally brings me back. And then when I'm ready, I will go back to sitting. That's if I'm with a group. If I'm like on a retreat, and then I'll go back to sitting. But some retreats don't like you to do that. They want you to. I've been on one recently where you have to sit. And I questioned. I'm like, no, I don't have to sit. We had to sit for an hour. And in the end, I got a chair. I said, like, no, sorry, I'm getting a chair.
So you've got to look after yourself. So
you can't. If you're in pain, you're in pain. And I think the other one is when I'm confronted with somebody, I get emotional. I used to get emotional. I used to get not so much angry, but scared when somebody's shouting at me. That comes from childhood. When they're shouting at me or they're verbally abusive, I can just hear a noise. I don't see or hear anything. And they would think that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't respond. But now, if it happens, which doesn't happen now because I'm working privately, I just literally breathe. I breathe, and I count, and I just stare at them in the eye, and then they're going on and on and on. But what I find is that they go, "Don't you have anything to say?" And I'm like, "No, because you're speaking." And I would just literally take it, but inside I'm still churning. I'm still churning because they're yelling at me and I can't stand being yelled at. And then I would just go, "Do you know what? I'm not going to listen to you anymore. You're really upsetting me. We'll speak at another time." And I'll walk away. I have
That's
to
to stop,
walk away.
isn't it? So
I have to walk away
yeah,
because
yeah.
yeah,
So the
yeah.
breath is like I'm helping myself, and then
Yeah.
in comes the strategy of like it's
just
absolute
I'm
stop.
walking away.
I'm
Yeah,
the way you're going to proceed is to
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, it's just so helpful sometimes to think about that and what's not going to create a huge backdraft in your own life that's going to tip you into overwhelm. So I hope that's helpful. We're going to do
yeah.
one last exercise together about enhancing resilience. So as we become more aware, let me just get this PowerPoint slide up. Come on, little PowerPoint. Sometimes it doesn't want to move on, does it? Yeah, when we become more aware, you know, we choosing to work on these new skills, you're like, oh, you know, you think of Karen's model in her book where, you know, it's cyclical, but it's exciting because you think, oh, I don't do that anymore. And I look after myself a bit more. Oh, what else could I do differently? You know, and so we're making a conscious choice to learn new skills, which isn't always comfortable for us. Like we said, you know, sometimes it can be really challenging. And so what we're going to do in this next one is build, we're moving to sort of like the action of compassion. And we're going to do an exercise where we're building phrases that you can use in your own practice that are meaningful to you. So we've got resources that we've given you. And the thing is about if a teacher is always leading a practice, sometimes the words, through our own conditioning, through our own understanding, or you know, whatever's going on for us, we will place a meaning on the words that are being given to us because they're not coming from this felt sense from us. And the words might come from your own core values of how you live your life, and that they'll come through in this exercise. So, you know, it's an opportunity to really explore what phrases are meaningful to me in my life, and take that forward as a practice. So one of the things that we can do to explore that for ourselves is look at the difference between wants and needs. And there's no judgment here. It's not a judgmental thing about, you know, I'd love another dog, you know. So it's like I don't really need one, but I do want one, you know. And so these wants often they're often materialistic, and that doesn't mean there's a judgment there. You know, we still want to aspire to things. They're aspirational, but they're not necessarily going to help you survive in life. You know, they're not necessary for survival. And perhaps in another society, you know, like I want to buy a better car, it wouldn't be relevant at all because in other societies, you know, they just fix what they've got all the time and it just keeps getting recycled. But in the society that we all live in, you know, there is a lot of this going on, and but it's not imperative to existence. So it's all right to want things, but just to know that, you know, our safety, our lives aren't shaped by this really. What they are shaped by is our needs, and our needs align with our core values. So when we really start to get to know ourselves, we understand the truth about our values and how we want to live our life and what's important to us, like things like integrity and honesty and openness and all of those things that we explored earlier on today. And they're universal and they're experienced by sensing it and discovered ourselves. No one can tell you what your core values are. They're from you, you know, and your needs are often from sensing into those core values. What do I actually need here? And those examples are often relational, so that feeling of being accepted, seen, heard, validated in a way that is, you know, congruent with your core values, not being shouted at. You know, you can be seen and heard, but it, you know, if it doesn't meet with your core values, there's a rub, isn't there? There's a discord there. So, you know, feeling respected, it might be material needs such as shelter, food, heat and clothing. And obviously you want those things as well. But if you think of somebody that perhaps hasn't got enough food, you know, that's where they're at. They can't really think any deeper than that. Well, what are my, you know, other needs? They're just meeting their material needs. And then there might be personal needs such as, you know, looking after your health, your emotional growth, which is what you're doing, developing your wisdom, your mental health, your well-being. So we're driven, you know, we're driven by our, you know, our personal needs here. So it's good to, it helps us make good choices and wise choices for ourselves. And both are okay. It's not a judgment, but it's useful to look at the difference and then just spend a little bit of time, because I really want to do the practice with you. I really want to do the development of phrases. So just spend a sort of couple of minutes writing down what your wants are in life. So maybe 2 columns, one wants and one needs. And just write down, you know, what are your wants in life? You can come back to this. Obviously, later you might want to explore it. Like Lorna said, it's, you know, need some time to process it. And then look at what your needs are in life. You know, what do I need in my life? In terms of my relational needs, personal needs, materially, what do I actually need? Would anyone like to share a want? Would anyone be able to share a want?
My want right now, because I don't have my own home anymore, I'm living in a rented place, is to have my own home again. That was my shelter. That was my secure place. Yeah, I think that's the only want at the moment. That's, I don't need anything else.
Yeah, and it
I
could
don't
go
want anything
in
else.
here, Carol, you know, you could explore that a bit more, you know, shelter. You're talking about shelter. You know, you want your own home. You want a place to feel safe and sheltered and,
Yeah.
you know, a place for yourself, don't you? And that's
Yeah.
your need. Yeah. Yeah. So Lorna, anything to add or?
All I put in once, because again, it's something to think about, is nice home, nice garden. We've got our own home, but it's a just as it is when you have your own home, it's a constant development. Like we're decorating at the moment, and just want it to be. I like to move from room to room and make sure it's comfy and nice and welcoming, and garden. Again, it just comes down to shelter. That was the first thing I thought of. I spend a lot of time at home.
Yeah. And what about a need?
Needs, I put food, warmth, love, laughter, fun. That's as far as I got.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's sometimes just exploring that and just kind of really like, so what do I need, you know, so what is that about a need in me, you know, and looking at the difference between the two. So a want is something that you don't need, it's not necessary, it's not imperative to your existence, but a need is, you know, it really comes from that, oh, you know, that's really important to me, really integral to my life. So like a home is sounds like it's really integral to both of your lives. A home, a place, a space, a shelter, you know, for you. Yeah. So we're going to do an exercise that is going to be creating your own meditation phrases. And it can be as an analytical meditation, which kind of means that you're going to be sensing into the body and be in meditation. And then I'm going to invite you to come out and write something down, which might feel a bit strange, a bit of a new experience. So, but let's just go with it. And these phrases that I'm going to ask you to sort of sense into and find are related to universal human needs. You know, it's universal. Can it be expressed as wishes? So, you know, one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is like, what do you wish for yourself? You know, so Carol might be wishing, oh, I wish for myself to have this lovely home where I feel safe and I feel connected. But, you know, how could you capture that, these wishes? So it could be, you know, may I live with ease and kindness, or may I find, or whatever. You don't have to add may I if you don't wish to. Sometimes people get caught up in the, you know, what that means to them to say may I. But if it's useful for you to sort of find the sentence, find it with ease, you know, may I have a life where I feel warm and sheltered, or something like that. But just go with the flow. Yeah, may I live with ease and kindness, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I, you know, have great friendships, or whatever it is. So it comes from your desire and your needs, and also, you know, often from a place of, you know, what you're struggling with. So you might feel some emotions there when we're going through this. So lean into your practices. And, you know, if you need to take a moment to look around and just kind of move or something, then do, you know. So I'm going to go through the development of phrases practice now. And this is going to really help you understand your own needs and put some language towards it. And you might not get there immediately. You might only get one or two, but this is something that you can carry on and do as your home practice as well. So it's just a skill that we're developing. So let's just put everything down, because I've taken you right up into the heads and, you know, talking about stuff and thinking about stuff. Let's get back into the body and close the eyes, soften the gaze, and really focus on your posture. So perhaps adapting your posture into something that's really useful for you. So for me, that's feeling my feet on the floor and kind of really sensing in, having that openness in the front of the body, noticing the breath. And just trusting that we're all holding space for each other this morning in this practice all together. We've got all the tools we need that are going to help us through this exploration of those wishes, what we really wish ourselves. So with your posture, you might want to notice the space in front of our hearts, just that spaciousness around us, in front of us, and noticing the support of the earth beneath us. And see if you can gradually move your attention to that heart space, that space in the very center of the body, in your chest area, that heart space. See what you need to do physically to allow yourself to connect with that. And remember that you've always got your tools, whether that's grounding or breathing or whatever it is you need, returning to steady your practice. And see if you can open up to the possibility of exploring what you need. What do you need? And maybe if it's useful, just staying with that and perhaps connecting with the heart, and there might be an image that helps you, such as a flower opening and expanding, really opening up to the possibilities that are here. When we really explore with kindness and compassion, what is it that I need? When you're ready, and it doesn't matter if you're not ready and you choose not to, you might just want to stay in the practice. I invite you just to gently open your eyes and perhaps write down a phrase or draw an image just to connect with what's come up for you. Perhaps it's a phrase of a wish, something that you've become aware of, and may I have that, because I recognize it as a need for me. And maybe you're writing down 1 or 2 words, or maybe you're tempted to write a whole book and just see what comes. And then we're going to go back into the practice. So just trust that you're going to remember. If you haven't managed to write everything down, just trust that you'll remember, and come back into your posture, feeling into the earth's crust, grounded, supported. That space in front of the body, in the heart center, using anything that you need, touch, soothing gestures to enable you to connect with it. And ask yourself, what do you really need right now? Not in the past, or what do you need in the future? What do you need right now? So maybe it's just space or warmth, this practice. Just breathing and being. Maybe it's something else. Just open up to the possibility of really knowing and connecting with what you need right here in this moment. And if you know what it is and you can offer it to yourself, it could be, gosh, a bit of self-soothing, or then take the opportunity to practice that. And ask, what does it feel like to really identify and to hear their own needs? Your own needs, what does it feel like for you to really sense in what's here for you? And if it's useful for you, then just to open the eyes just gently and just to write down, or just write down a reflection or anything that came to mind. What do you really need right now? And what's it like for you to connect with that? Letting that go and trusting yourself that if you want to do more reflection later, it will come. Closing your eyes and softening your gaze once more, sensing into the groundedness, the stability of the earth, the spaciousness around the heart and your heart center, connecting again. And just asking, what would you really like to hear from others? What would you like to be whispered into your ear every day? So what would you really like to hear from others? You could choose something to be whispered into your ear every single day. What would it be? Perhaps it might be something like, I'm here for you. Or my favourite one, right here, right now, it's okay. Or something different. What would it be? And then gently opening your eyes and perhaps writing that down. It could be, I love you. It could be, I accept you just as you are. So take your time. Thinking of those circles of safety, you might want to close your eyes and take a breath and then see what else comes in. Get caught up in stories about all these other things, just keep coming back to that question. What would I really love to have whispered in my ear every single day? What would help me? Coming back, knowing that, trusting that you can come back to this anytime you want. Just asking yourself, what do I need? What do I really need? What's it like for me to connect with this? And what would I dearly wish to have said to me every day of my life? Starting to pay attention to the breath once more, noticing the heart center, how that feels now, maybe doing some soothing gestures. It's moving, sometimes rocking can be really lovely. Just moving in a way that's useful for you right here, right now. Or just sitting with the breath, whatever feels right for you, whatever makes you safe and secure. Taking a breath in, noticing where it goes. And as you exhale, just dropping that chin down towards the chest. Opening the eyes. You might want to put your hands over your eyes and letting that light really gently. Having a stretch. So we've gone over time, so I do appreciate if you need to go, but I've got time to stay and just unpack this a little bit more if you have. Has anybody got to rush off? No. Okay, well let's stay. Yeah, let's stay together. So what was it like? You might need a little bit more time to process, but just what was it like to be in that process, in that moment of what you need right now, based on, you know, the sort of discussions and that we've been going through this morning? Was there anything new that came in for you, or would you say you noticed different things in your body, or yeah, what came up for you when you were doing those phrases and thinking about what you'd like to be said to you?
Yeah, I found it quite powerful actually, because that's a really, it felt very compassionate, very deep compassion practice, which yeah, I said before, I'm not very compassionate to myself. I am more now, but it's something I still struggle with a bit. But yeah, and I think the things that came up for me, just again, it's definitely something I'm going to need to process a bit more, but just on the surface, I was kind of thinking, what do I need right now? Kind of things that always come to me when I'm practicing, like peace of mind, quiet the mind, just kind of just turn the volume down on my thoughts. That's kind of what I feel I need sometimes, because I do overthink and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Clarity of mind, that kind of thing. And what do I need right now? Is the practice was what I needed in that moment, actually. And that's what I do when I feel that I need something to help quiet the mind, is I practice mindfulness. And I always find that I need quiet, and I suppose that comes of just, I don't know, feeling safe at home. I just need a quiet space, solitude, that kind of thing. And then it made me think that I have actually booked my first residential retreat in July, which I'm really looking forward to. And it reminded me of that, which I'm really excited about, at Sharpen Trust. But yeah,
Nice.
and phrases, the first one that came to mind that I'd like to hear somebody say to me every day is "I love you," which I do hear from my family because they're very lovely and loving. But it's just a lovely one to hear all the time, isn't it? But thinking, oh, I could use that in my practice to myself. It's not one I've used in that way before. Yeah, just, I don't know, it was there's loads of things going around in my head, but just, it was really compassionate, and I just, yeah, felt really connected to that.
So bringing in those, you know, those phrases and what you would like to said to you, you know, hearing yourself say it, really hearing it from other people, could be really help you develop even more resilience around it. So that's what you're doing with those practices. So, you know, I really urge you this week, you know, and all going on in your life, is to, you know, formulate that a bit more, do a bit more reflection and bring that in, you know, even you could even record yourself saying it if you wanted to, or you could just know them or read them to yourself, or but yeah, it can be really powerful because they've come from you and your own needs and your own values and all things. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear how you get on next week. That's part of the homework. Is that an affectionate breathing? That's your, you know, your go-to practice, the recording, but also to practice with these phrases as well. And yeah, have a look at your communication with other people, just do some reflections around that. Carol, what was it like for you? You're scribbling, she's away. She's like, oh.
That was different. It was very, very different. I've never done that before. I think that when you ask the first question, I think for me, not just a physical, like a concrete home, but to be home within myself, because myself is home. Because if my home is not okay here, nothing else is okay, or nothing else will be okay. So I know that when my home is in order, inside, everything's fine. But when it's upset, then I have to have a go-to place, which is my breathing. I think for me at the moment, it's just tell me every day just to stay resilient and keep what you're doing is correct. Yeah, I think for me, yeah. And the other thing is, what I want right now is to be in water, because I like the feel of water on my skin, and I like being in the pool in the dark, because it's just got this really amazing feeling. And right now I just need to be in water.
So are you going to act on that?
Yeah, I am.
Good, good, well done. Yeah, and that phrase, you know, be resilient. It could be, if that's a phrase that worked for you, that's an amazing phrase. I'm just thinking, just playing with that, and maybe bringing some softness into you're on the right path. You know, you're coming home is the right thing for you to do, or you know, so. Or may I have a sense of being at home in my body, in my mind, or something like that. And whatever works, but just sort of really exploring that this week and seeing if there's what comes up, you know, and being with that and that strong sense of, and that's what you're doing, Carol, isn't it? You're working on here. I'm coming home to myself all the time. And actually that's you know, that's an amazing thing to be doing. Specifically because you've shared a lot about, you know, you've obviously had a very difficult time lately, so really looking after yourself, both of you, because we're all precious, aren't we? Does that feel okay? Is everybody all right?
Brilliant. That's really good, very insightful.
Good. Okay, so affectionate breathing, that's your practice that you've got a recording for. Using your own phrases to feel resilient. So keep bringing them in to your practice and your life, and communicate compassionately with other people, and see how that goes, and see when you receive something of that as well. And then there's a lovely phrase from Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication. He says, every criticism, judgment, diagnosis, and expression of anger is a tragic expression of an unmet need. So we can bear that in mind when other people's needs as well, can't we? It's just often what do I need is a really powerful question that we can connect with. Go and have your swim.
I will.
Lorna's gonna have her solitude, aren't you? Time for yourself. I'm gonna have something to eat.
I'm going to get the dogs and I'm going to go off for a nice walk.
Oh, going to be in nature. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So I'll see you next time. And I'm just going to say bye to Em. And Em, if you're watching this, we wish you well. We missed you today, and we hope you found it useful.
I hope she's well.
I hope you're well. Hope you're well.
So,
okay, bye.
Lots of love. Bye.
Bye, everyone. See you next week. Bye.
Yes, see you next week. Bye.